Right now, I will cut straight to the chase because we have another panel discussion pending and it's going to be an interesting one because cybersecurity matters, right? And we're going to talk about a proactive approach to ever-increasing number and sophistication of cyber threats. Our moderator for this discussion is the Marketing and Communication Manager for NRD Cyber Security, Živilė Nečejauskaitė. Please welcome Živilė to the stage. Živilė, please take a seat. We'll just make sure that we have all our panelists connected and available. So let's give it a quick check. Do we have everybody here and all is good? Perfect.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Please have a productive discussion and good luck.
Thank you. So it's going to be our last, but not the least interesting and not least important discussion about a very significant topic, so cybersecurity. Technological innovation in financial sector, it's nothing new. However, in recent years, there has been a boom of Fintech sector, which has tickled the feet for the old financial ecosystem players. And there has been a lot of innovative solutions in terms of user-friendly applications. Everything is becoming easier, faster, more efficient. But as well as opening many opportunities, it's also opening many doors for fraudulent activities and malicious activities. So today I'm joined by prominent cybersecurity experts to discuss what are the challenges and what are the main cybersecurity threats financial ecosystem in Europe is facing. So please join me in welcoming the panelists. Dr. Rytis, who is the Director of National Cybersecurity Center in Lithuania. Hello, Rytis.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mr. Darius Povilaitis, Senior Cybersecurity Expert at Bank of Lithuania. Hello, Darius.
Hello. Hello.
Mr. Miroslav Lučinskij, General Manager at Critical Security Seconsult Company. Hello, Miroslav.
Hello, everyone.
And finally, Mr. Viktoras Kamarevcevas, SKID Solutions AS Business Manager in Lithuania. Hello, Viktoras.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
So let's kick off with a question for all. And let's touch on the very recent events. So in the light of COVID-19 and many processes and procedures moving online even faster than expected, as we are losing physical touch and everything is becoming contactless, in a few sentences, how would you describe the cyber threats for financial sector within the EU have changed or are due to change? Let's start with Viktoras.
I guess that threats always was there, and nothing in that sense is nothing changed. But as a really rush for transformation and digitalization, and that obviously can lead to recklessness, and I guess that's the biggest risk. I think, obviously, when most of the business will move to digital world, criminals who were active in a physical world will have to express themselves somewhere else, and obviously that will be digital world, and we will adapt their skills, and we have to be ready, and we have to educate everyone on the market. But the digital world and the physical world are the same in that sense that consequences hurts in both worlds.
And Dr. Rytis?
Yes, interesting observation is that during difficult economical times, when we remember economical crisis in 2008 or now during the COVID, cyber risk and cyber activities from cyber criminals on financial issues actually increased in economical crisis more than 10 years ago, and now we feel the same. So the short answer to your question is cyber activities and cyber incidents number during those difficult periods of time is increasing, definitely.
Perhaps you have had the chance to speak with other national cybersecurity centers within Europe. Are they facing increase in cybersecurity threats as well?
In relation to cyber incidents that we are measuring in the national cybersecurity centers, national CERTs, during the COVID situation, number of incidents remained the same, but the type of incidents in relation to COVID thematics, as COVID scams and financial cyber crimes incidents with that spheres, that thematic increasing actually. And we are not sure how about cyber crime measured in cyber police units. That could be interesting to observe as well, but at the moment I don't have data.
Okay, so it seems finance is even more of a hot topic than in terms of cybersecurity in light of COVID. Mr. Darius Povilaitis, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree to my colleagues. So just add something that even before COVID, the financial organizations were amongst those who were to cyberspace very fast. So COVID just made that online presence even stronger. But you know, crooks did not disappear because of COVID, so they are just moving after money. And if the money goes in the cyberspace, so there goes some crooks. So that means that cyber attacks will become more sophisticated, and attack technical level will be higher than before. And if we will take some countermeasures for the found vulnerabilities, the attacks will also increase. If you just recall the beginning of the year, when we faced the attacks against our bank, so it's the proof of the concept. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Lučinskij, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I would say I have to agree with my colleagues that there are challenges related to COVID situation, because obviously people are now working from homes. So it means that also the fintech community, their personnel have to sit at home, and for example, if we see also the call centers and so on, who are also sitting home. Then there is another aspect is that you have to, well, people are forced because the banks are closed basically physically. So those people who were basically using the traditional services, they have to go online. And the idea is that apart from the increasing sophistication of the attacks, my personal opinion is that it's possible that also the traditional attacks, or scams or phishing emails we will see an increase, because the people who are not used to technology are now have to use basically the fintech or traditional banking online. So this we'll see. Also, from our experience with consulting, financial organizations, we also see that they get increased number of potential attacks and more probe requests and so on. So actually situation is the attack number is increasing.
Okay, so it seems that we all agree that the importance of financial sector and the protection of financial sector has only been increasing in recent days or recent months. So our next question is about single market ambitions within European Union. So Mr. Povilaitis, as more and more institutions within the EU are becoming interconnected, more and more processes become borderlands. How should international cooperation for solving cybersecurity incidents be organized? Which institutions or bodies should play a key part?
Speaking about cybersecurity in general, where cooperation, in my opinion, should be hierarchical. I mean, national CERTs should be the key players here. But from my experience, what I did with experience with CERTs in the foreign countries, their responsibilities and capabilities differ a lot, and that might be should be somehow standardized in order to go that way. And speaking regarding cybersecurity in financial sector, in my opinion, central banks as supervising institutions should be the key players here. Supervising institutions, they are already performing some functions for stopping and preventing some cyber threats. And it seems that it would be the most natural and easiest way to use those existing capabilities of the central banks as local cybersecurity authorities in the financial sector.
And Dr. Rytis, is your opinion the same or any different in regard to this question?
Yes, actually, we have authorities dealing with cybersecurity incident, but the question perhaps is related to financially motivated cyber attacks and attacks related to financial sector. In that regard, national CERTs and more in relation to cyber crimes and Europol and national police units work, the work is maybe slowly undergoing the investigation. And the question, do we need anything more on European level coordination is a very good, and perhaps in relation to the conference thematic could be one of the proposal to discuss in the future on a European level the financial or fintech industry cyber incidents investigation and response system to have in Europe. Currently, we are discussing in Brussels cybersecurity competence center created. It's undergoing right now this creation. Perhaps this center, in my opinion, could work more on fintech cybersecurity issue to coordinate between the European countries' activity in that regard.
So it's sort of specialized but centralized at the same approach, right?
Yes, exactly. And perhaps this consultancy work and advisory and information sharing could be the main issue to work in that regard, in that competence centers, as we do have national responsible CERT authorities who investigate incidents, but more sharing information, more common approach finding on European level, perhaps is a good idea to discuss in the future.
Okay, so let's stay on the fintech topic for a moment longer. Do you feel the cyber threats this sector is facing are any different from other financial ecosystem players? If yes, what should be done about it at national and sectorial levels? Mr. Miroslav, what would you say?
Yes, I think the idea is that fintech is also facing similar threats as all the financial institutions, because, well, there are two aspects. One aspect is that they process money. They do the financial, transactions, and the other part is that they have also collecting a lot of personal data. And for most fintechs, the idea is that they are not necessarily profitable, but they try to increase their user base. The more users they have, then the value of the fintech increases. So there is a challenge that your information security cybersecurity and incident management processes or approaches are not scaling together with the growing user base, because, well, what fits for maybe 1,000 users does not necessarily work for 10,000 users. So I think that's one aspect, and yeah, basically the threats are also valid also for other financial sector players. So that would be.
Okay, Mr. Darius Povilaitis, what are your thoughts on the threats that fintech is facing? Are they different from other financial ecosystem players?
Yeah, in my opinion, that the challenges to fintechs are a little bit different compared to the traditional financial system, traditional banking. In order to get its customers, fintechs has to outperform traditional financial system players and become more attractive, because if they want to get those users from the traditional banking systems. So generally, if they do often have a limited resources, for example, people, expertise, money, etc., and they rely actively on technology. They heavily rely on that, and that becomes a real challenge for them, especially that relates to cyber security area. And what is most important, even if they want to get some help in the cyber security area, it is often, how to say, it is not accessible. It's difficult to have a good service. I suppose that I deal with those fintechs directly, and I do see the problems that they are facing. So generally, in my opinion, they should get some cyber security help if they need, and that help should be, let's say, reliable, because at the moment what we do have, or what do I see in Lithuania especially, that there are a lot of some self-proclaimed security specialists which do a lot of damage, just providing the vision, just fake sense of a security.
And so who should be responsible then in providing that help for fintech sector players?
It might be some specialized center, some I don't know, maybe some center that Rytis mentioned. It should be some new service or provided. It might be provided by central bank, by national certs, or some joint venture. But as I said, the problem is that if they even want to have help, they don't know where to get.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Rytis, are there any specific recommendations that you as a National Cybersecurity Center give to fintech sector in particular, as opposed to the other financial ecosystem players?
Yeah, I agree very much with my colleagues and do feel that fintech is young sector, very growing, and usually, or sometimes, let's say, startup companies that the main business approach is to start business, to start operations, and this sector is, when they starting up, is not caring enough on cybersecurity, because the main issue is to start business them at the beginning. And that could be dangerous, that could be wrong approach, because the cyber incidents, the hacking some of the databases could influence bad reputation to the fintech sector in general. So we need to advise and to raise competences of cybersecurity in fintech sector. That could be a role of one of the national responsible institutions, Lithuanian banks, central banks, and a new cooperation model, a new institutions or European competence centers that would address that in regard of helping, advising, and information sharing, and not maybe not at all festival or regulations that could be follow up.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Viktoras, what are your thoughts?
I agree with colleagues that in general, financial sector is in high risk for attacks, and fintech as well. And just because attackers are almost every time is after your money, and where is money lays. And but it's different with fintech, I guess, that most of the time fintech tries uncharted territories. And in uncharted territories, there's a lot of unknown, and we just learn from that as we go. And I see that the best help that would be obviously the regulation that would be harmonized within all EU, and also that support for fintech or financial sectors also would be centralized in all EU.
And perhaps from other industry players from other European countries, have you heard the situation is universal within the whole of Europe, or is there any fragmentation amongst different member states in regards of needing of that support and direction? Hello, is everything okay with your sound?
So I'm sorry, I haven't heard what you said.
Right, okay, so the question is that perhaps from other industry players from other European countries, have you heard that they have similar or different needs in terms of having that help and support for regulation?
Obviously, yes. And that's because, like, if regulation would be different in all within our EU, that will force the fintech companies just to migrate to or open license in that country where regulation is a bit more loose, and in that light, everyone will lose on the market. As one of the great advantages of fintech, that they act without borders. So at least within EU, I see that there is a great need to have a harmonized regulation.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So let's not move on from fintech too far, and let's talk about the different methods and applications for user authentication and their secure usage, which quite recently has received quite a lot of attention in various member states, especially in Lithuania as well. So who should be responsible for communicating to the users how to securely apply those authentication methods, and should it be the service provider or regulatory authority or somebody else? And what's the best way of doing so? And I would like to start with Mr. Darius Povilaitis.
Okay. So, as you said, what we saw recently in attacks against the banks, that some banks have taken countermeasures in advance, and those attacks did not impact them at all, while others suffered from those attacks, from those identification abuse attacks. So, and we saw that attackers were shifting from one bank to another, and what we see here is the lack of the knowledge sharing between financial area players. I mean, if one bank knows how to protect or they do prevent that, they do predict that such attack might happen, and they mitigate it in advance, that information is not shared between players. So I suppose that any kind of authentications and other important issues should be discussed and approved by some dedicated security expert board, which might be formed by interested players in that area.
And what do you think is the best method of conveying the message then to the end users?
It's very difficult. What I see that the users every time, the bad guys, they are finding every time the ways how to abuse, how to fool the users, etc., etc. The method that we take, the learning method is okay, but I think it's not enough. So generally, I would rely more heavily on the countermeasures from the technology part, from the security experts, and unfortunately, the users will be the weakest link in this situation.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rytis, what is your opinion on this question?
Yes, this is actually a very, very important and critical questions, and perhaps, in my opinion, service providers is the main who should, first of all, decide and choose the right methods and application and technique to authenticate user. And only then regulation or supervision authorities should step up. The colleague observed the expert investigations, the expert reports and suggestions on secure authentication should be taken into account, of course. All the vulnerabilities, security gaps should be identified at the beginning before it goes to the market, to the end users, when end users and weak authentication methods could be exploited by bad guys, hackers, and then at the end, those will be people, the common users, who will lose the money from the attacks. So that's my opinion. Thanks.
And Mr. Kamarevcevas, as a representative of one of such solutions, what would you say? What would you comment?
At least for me, it is an obvious answer for that it is everyone's duty. The service provider, a regulatory authority, and the same consumer has to educate himself as well. And as I mentioned at the beginning, and main message here has to be that digital world and physical world in sense of the consequences of your actions is really, really close. And that if you lose money on your wallet, you lose in physical world, it same happens in the digital world, and you're not in possession of your money. And but also there's other things that can be done by regulatory authority and service providers. But first of all, we will encourage regulatory authority to create a common rules for transparency, to share information between service providers and financial institutions. But as cyber threats happening really fast, and cyber and time is really essential for that. And when everyone is punished for mistakes, and after that, not really, when a private sector is not really encouraged to share pain points and to share with government and to share with themselves in general. So obviously that transparency could help that, and regulatory authority could secure the environment for such knowledge share.
Okay. And then at the EU level, what would be the most effective or efficient way of making those applications more secure for the end users? Would it be implying certain regulation, or introducing a regulation, or raising awareness, or another way? That's an open question for any of the panelists. So just to answer whoever feels.
I would say that our experience shows that it's not like a cyber security itself of methods of authentication is in risk, but rather a consumer who is using. And the methods how they're using victims is quite old as old. They're trying to convince victims to do the transfers by themselves. So I would rather say that the most effective tool is to educate and to do that within all EU.
Okay.
Let me add a little bit also to this discussion. I agree with Viktoras that the users should be educated, but also the technical solutions should be, made, let's say, more sophisticated. I mean, they should not be so easily vulnerable as we saw. So it also should be, I would say, stopped such a way of introducing vulnerable applications into the very, I would say, the financial areas and in other areas.
I would disagree with that, but as authentication application itself, at least to my knowledge, in Lithuania there wasn't any breaches, but rather a breach of customer trust and riding on that trust to convince. So I wouldn't say that it is quite a technology is in danger, but rather a user.
I suppose that for the end user, it's important the final result. It is if a user can use some service provided for, let's say, some bank securely, or it can't. Who is responsible for that? Is it bank? Is it some financial institution? Is it some service provider? Is not very important. It's, I think, the biggest problem is that the user cannot feel safe. And I see that a lot of things can be, say, fixed here. And it's not, let's say, pointing out who is responsible for that. I just trying to say that such a solution should be should go more throughout verification before being brought to the usage.
So, Darius, what do you think European Union could do then to encourage the secure production of the applications?
I suppose that it's in the whole EU, the authentication methods, providers, etc., they differ a lot. Yes, we know that there are some standardization issues, how to initiate money transfer, etc. But authentication part, I think there are a lot of various attempts. So it's difficult for me to speak for EU level. I don't know how it is organized in other countries, but in Lithuania, I just, as I said, I foresee it can be done if you just gather a group of experts who would, let's say, estimate the possible problems in the future and try to mitigate them, because that problem that we saw, it's well-known vulnerability. It is written in all methodology of testing web applications. So it's very strange for me that such a vulnerability just slipped past a lot of security officers, etc., etc. So I just can recommend that.
Right, okay, let's move to another question which we have from the audience. And Mr. Povilaitis, I would like to keep you on the spotlight just for a little bit because the question is for you. How should fintech secure operational and security risks? How does the Bank of Lithuania check if fintechs comply with these requirements?
Okay, so generally we do Lithuanian Bank does supervision of I would say of the companies that they look after. So those supervisions includes operational risk from the from operational point of view. They also includes operational risk from the IT point of view. So we had some practice just doing pen test for the financial institutions, for fintechs, and just acting as as outside hackers, just trying to estimate and help them to identify possible problems and prevent them in the future. But it is more let's say, it's not very it's not written, that it should be performed on every fintech. It's one thing. Another thing that it requires a lot of resources to do that. So if there are some some rules or some laws which would require for Lithuanian bank or some other institution just perform some verification or just do some evaluation of security of the fintechs or other companies, that would make us to do that more, let's say, in more every year or every 2 years or something like that, because now it just goes as you do some checks. So it's more occasional approach. But all the same, if we do see some problems in the fintechs or in some banks or in sector, we do inform all the participants of those problems. So it was regarding authentication, it was regarding other problems. So we do something, maybe it's not enough, but it's already some regulation issues at the let's say at the law level.
Okay, thank you. And the next question takes us from service providers to service users or end users. So what are the key advantages and challenges consumers are facing with the increasing digitalization of the financial sector? How private sector could be contributing to securing digital environment within Europe? Mr. Lučinskij, what would be your opinion on this question?
Yes, well, basically, if we speak about key advantages, obviously, fintechs allow consumers to get what they want, to satisfy their financial needs faster and more maybe efficiently than with traditional banking. That's obvious as well. If we're talking about challenges, then it means that we have we use much more different fintech or financial service providers. So again, let's say as a consumer, for example, if a consumer encounters some phishing email or similar attempt to, as also Darius talks about, this sometimes issues with authentication, then it's since every provider uses some different schemes and so on, then it's hard for the consumer to see if the request is legitimate, for example. Because as an example, just some weeks ago, I guess I personally received, for example, a link in an email from a bank, our company uses, and they said we need to do some customer, know your customer procedures, and then there is this please click this link to access the system. Yeah? But the bank itself states that it doesn't send any links with asking for a password or asking to log in, and this was a legitimate request. Yeah? But so as a consumer, for example, okay, we are maybe security experts, but it's also important that fintechs would and also financial institutions would respect the rules of the game and would define very clearly the how to say the channels, how they reach their customers, yeah? In order to, let's say, prevent fraud and so on. And another aspect probably is that, for example, if we are talking about how private sector could be contributing to securing digital environments in Europe, I would say that, for example, there are some clusters of for example, IT security, cyber security, compliance clusters who also here in Lithuania, which try to combine expertise from different companies, different fields to make, how to say, some kind of advisory service for fintechs, also to promote some ideas, because again, as also the other experts mentioned, that there is for fintech is very hard to how to say, to be fully compliant, to invest in cybersecurity, but on the other hand, there is no guidelines, how to say, which could be created together with government institutions in Europe, together with private experts and associations. So that would be my take.
Thank you. And Mr. Kamarevcevas, would you like to add anything to this answer?
I guess the obvious advantage for consumers is that we're not bound to physical borders. And also that is a challenge, as there's a lot of fintech appearing now on a map. It's really hard to understand whom I can trust as a consumer from the beginning. Understand if the regulation is really, if a regulator is really supervising the fintech really good. Also, but another advantage I see that is fintech has good capabilities to understand his customer, to understand what his behavior and to provide services for them that is tailored. But also with that, there is no physical contact, there is no physical touch, and I also think that is important for banks, and at least as a consumer, I seek for that, to have a personal touch and to understand that financial institutions cares about my needs. And I guess what private sector could do that to make more secure. So to be more transparent, but in order to do that, regulator has to set clear rules, and that the private sector wouldn't be punished for being transparent.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. So let's close our discussion. And do our panelists have any final advice to European Commission for making the financial sector within Europe more secure?
Let me give a suggestion and opinion. As national cybersecurity centers do accumulate all the cybersecurity incidents, and there is, in our Lithuanian case, thousands of incidents passing. Usually we do not exclude incidents related to financial sector as a separate. And maybe it's not a right approach, as we see from this discussion. There is certain initiative in other countries like Scandinavian countries, like United Kingdom, where we do have dedicated financial sector CERTs that do address in that organization, do address fintech and financial sector security issues. And this is perhaps a good approach to have a satellite organizations that concentrates on financial sector cybersecurity, that only this is matter for this organization, cybersecurity, not putting in one umbrella and centralized organization. So separation of financial sector cybersecurity incidents management bodies, it could be good approach, it could be the kind of recommendation and suggestion in EU legislation in the future to go that direction. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other thoughts? If not, well, thank you very much. I thank my panelists. So we had Dr. Rytis, Director of National Cybersecurity Center of Lithuania, Mr. Darius Povilaitis, Senior Cybersecurity Expert at the Bank of Lithuania, Mr. Miroslav Lučinskij, General Manager at Critical Security Consult Company, Mr. Viktoras Kamarevcevas, SK ID Solutions AS Business Manager in Lithuania. So thank you very much all for joining.
Thank you very much, Živilė. I'll keep you just with me for a little bit, if that's all right. We have a very quick question for our panelists, which has been posted, I think, in the chat window instead of the comments window, so that's the reason why you probably couldn't see it. If anybody could very briefly, again, because we're short on time, comment on whether you have any comments on the EID on the European scale.
In general, so I guess EID is under eIDAS regulation, and eIDAS regulates two separate things, like e-signature, and that's regulated harmonized within all EU. And when it comes to EID, it is regulated by country separately. But what we see is that regulations country by country difference, but makes challenge to use EIDs in cross-border.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I think we will say a huge thank you to our panelists, as also our moderator. Živilė, thank you very much. It was a pleasure listening to your conversation.